Lauren, unshaken, unimpressed. Then, with a single measured movement, she reached into the sleek leather bag at her side and pulled out a slim, elegantly embossed folder. She flipped it open, revealing a set of documents clipped neatly inside. Without breaking eye contact, she turned the first page toward Lauren, tapping her manicured finger on the top line. Lauren blinked. The color drained from her face as she registered the words printed in bold, unmistakable ink. Naomi Williams. Executive Board Member, Aerospace Global Holdings. A silence so thick it could have suffocated the entire cabin settled over the plane. The businessman across the aisle straightened in his seat, brows raised in sudden recognition. The nosy socialite covered her mouth, her earlier smirk vanishing. Even Mr. Raymond, still clutching his newspaper, peered over the rim of his glasses with quiet intrigue. Lauren's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard, her arms loosening from their rigid fold. Naomi spoke at last, her voice smooth, unwavering. "This is my jet." A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. Lauren staggered back a step, her mind scrambling for a way out, but Naomi wasn't finished. "I own a controlling stake in this airline. I oversee operations. I sign off on policies, including the ones that dictate who gets to sit where." She tilted her head slightly, as if studying a specimen under glass. "Tell me, Lauren, who exactly doesn't belong here?" Lauren's lips parted, but no sound came. The cabin felt suddenly too small, the walls pressing in, the judgmental eyes of every passenger locked onto her like spotlights. A beat passed, then another. Naomi exhaled slowly and set the folder on the tray table, the gesture deliberate. "I could call security too," she mused. "Have them remove someone who isn't fit to represent my airline. But—" She leaned back, her expression unreadable. "I'd rather let you decide your own fate." The weight of the ultimatum landed like a thunderclap. Grace, the junior attendant, shifted uncomfortably before speaking up, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ms. Williams, Naomi's gaze softened. "I know, Grace," she said simply. Lauren, however, had nowhere to hide. Her perfect posture had crumbled, her breath coming in shallow bursts. She turned toward the passengers, hoping for an ally, a lifeline, but all she found were stony expressions, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Mrs. Raymond broke the silence first. The elderly woman, who had spent the past 5 minutes knitting in furious concentration, now set her needles aside with deliberate care. She looked Lauren up and down, then said in a voice far too sweet to be anything but lethal, "Well, this is awkward." The businessman chuckled. The nosy socialite let out a scandalized little squeak. Even Grace bit back a nervous smile. Lauren's shoulders slumped. She inhaled sharply, as though steeling herself, then turned on her heel and strode toward the back of the plane, her face burning. Naomi watched her go, then reached for her phone. One message sent. A moment later, the intercom crackled to life. A new voice, crisp and professional, filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We'd like to apologize for the earlier misunderstanding. Please be assured that all passengers are welcome aboard this flight, and we are committed to providing a respectful and inclusive experience for everyone." Naomi tapped the screen of her phone again, satisfaction flickering across her features. A direct line to the CEO had its perks. She turned her gaze out the window, watching as the tarmac stretched endlessly beneath the golden glow of the setting sun. For years, people like Lauren had assumed they could decide who belonged. Not anymore. Not on her plane, not in her world. And as the engines roared to life, signaling the beginning of yet another journey, Naomi Williams sat back, utterly at ease. She had just reminded everyone, in no uncertain terms, power belonged to those who claimed it. Lauren's breath hitched. The atmosphere in the cabin was electric, charged, with something undeniable, something irreversible. Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words cut sharper than any outburst ever could. Before Lauren could respond, a voice interrupted, crisp and authoritative. "Excuse me, miss." Heads turned. A man in a navy blue uniform strode down the aisle. His steps were measured, his expression unreadable. Behind him, two more airline officials followed, their eyes scanning the cabin. The lead officer, his badge gleaming under the cabin lights, stopped beside Lauren. "Are you Lauren Reed?" Lauren blinked, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Yes, but—" The officer didn't wait for her excuses. He turned to Naomi, his demeanor shifting instantly. "Ms. Williams, are you all right?" Naomi exhaled slowly, smoothing her blazer. "I'm fine," she said, then tilted her head slightly. "But this flight attendant has been problematic." Lauren's face drained of color. "Wait a minute." The officer raised a hand, silencing her with a single gesture. "We've received a direct complaint from corporate regarding your behavior, Ms. Reed. That slap you just delivered, it's on record." Gasps rippled through the passengers. The businessman shook his head, murmuring, "Unbelievable." The nosy socialite, now pale, clutched her pearls as if she were the one about to be removed. Lauren turned frantically to Grace, eyes pleading. "Tell them! You saw how she was acting. She was being difficult." Grace hesitated. Then, in a quiet but resolute voice, she said, "I saw everything. And Ms. Williams was nothing but respectful. You were the one out of line, Lauren." Lauren's breath came in sharp bursts. Her gaze darted between Naomi, the passengers, and the officers. "This is ridiculous," she spat. "You're taking her side. Over me. I've worked here for years." The officer's voice was calm but firm. "And that ends today." Stunned silence fell over the cabin. "You are officially relieved of duty," he continued. "You'll be escorted off this flight immediately, and given the severity of your actions, expect to hear from legal." Lauren's knees nearly buckled. "You can't be serious." Two officers flanked her. She tried to resist, but the grip on her arm was unyielding. As they turned her toward the exit, her gaze landed on Naomi one last time. Naomi met her stare, unshaken. "I told you," she murmured, voice like steel. "Actions have consequences." Lauren was gone. The moment the cabin door closed behind her, a beat of silence held in the air. Then a slow clap echoed from the back of the plane. It was the businessman. Then another, and another, until the entire cabin erupted in applause. Naomi simply exhaled, smoothing the water stains on her trousers, and turned to Grace. "Could I finally get that drink?" Grace beamed, nodding. "Right away, Ms. Williams." As the plane finally prepared for takeoff, Naomi leaned back in her seat, completely at ease. The message had been delivered loud and clear. Respect wasn't given. It was claimed, and today she had claimed it. Lauren's breathing turned shallow. Her pulse hammered in her ears. This couldn't be happening. She had spent the entire flight lauding her authority over Naomi, mocking her, dismissing her, even striking her, only to find out Naomi was the single most powerful person in the entire airline. And now Naomi Williams was standing before her, calm, poised, and in complete control. Lauren tried to speak, to claw back some semblance of power, but the words stuck in her throat. Naomi took a slow step forward, her voice still, composed. "I have no patience for employees who abuse their position. You are no longer employed by this airline." Lauren's breath hitched. "Well, wait. You're fired," Naomi said, final and absolute. A murmur of approval rippled through the passengers. The businessman gave a small nod. The socialite whispered a stunned "wow," and Grace, for the first time since this ordeal began, let out a quiet sigh of relief. Lauren's knees nearly buckled. "You can't just fire me like this. I've worked here for years." Naomi's expression didn't change, and yet all it took was one flight for you to show exactly why you don't belong here. The two assistants exchanged a glance before one of them spoke. "Security will escort you off the aircraft immediately." Lauren turned, her eyes wild, searching for sympathy, but all she found were cold, disapproving stares. No one was on her side. The businessman adjusted his watch. "Actions have consequences," he murmured, echoing Naomi's earlier words. Lauren let out a shaky breath. She had no more power here, no more control. As security stepped forward, she took a step back, her defiance crumbling. "This isn't fair," she muttered weakly, but Naomi was already done with her. She turned away, dismissing Lauren without another word. The security officers flanked the disgraced flight attendant, leading her down the aisle as passengers turned in their seats, watching her walk the path of shame. By the time Lauren disappeared down the stairs and into the waiting car, the entire cabin exhaled as if releasing a breath they'd been holding. Naomi finally sat down, crossing one leg over the other as she picked up her phone. Grace approached hesitantly. "Ms. Williams, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for not speaking up sooner." Naomi met her gaze, her expression softening slightly. "You did the right thing in the end. That's what matters." Grace nodded, relief washing over her. "Can I get you that drink now?" Naomi smiled. "Yes, I'd love that." As the plane taxied down the runway, the passengers settled back in their seats. And Naomi? She simply opened her book, flipped to the next page, and read, completely at peace. Phones were out, cameras rolling. The entire cabin had become a courtroom, and Naomi Williams was the judge, jury, and executioner. She took one measured step toward Lauren, her voice calm, but laced with an authority that sent a shiver down the disgraced flight attendant's spine. "While you were busy judging me," Naomi said, her gaze unwavering, "you failed to do your job. Every passenger deserves respect, no matter what you assume about them. And now," her voice sharpened, "there are consequences." Lauren's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She wanted to fight back, to argue, to salvage what little power she had left, but her throat locked up because she felt it. The weight of every single pair of eyes in that cabin pressing down on her. For the first time, her confidence cracked. Naomi turned to the pilot. "I want this addressed immediately, and I want to make sure it never happens again." The pilot nodded without hesitation. "Understood, Miss Williams." Lauren took an instinctive step back, her mind racing. She had to get out, now. Before this, it got any worse, but the second she moved, the pilot blocked her path. His face was unreadable, his voice firm. "You're not going anywhere." A cold rush of panic surged through Lauren's veins. Then Naomi delivered the final blow. "Lauren, your actions today have proven you are unfit for this position." A heartbeat of silence. "Effective immediately. You are fired." The words hit like a thunderclap. The passengers gasped. A few even cheered. Lauren stumbled back, her face draining of color. Please, Miss Williams," she choked out, desperation cracking her voice. "I didn't mean—" Naomi's expression didn't soften. If anything, it hardened. "You didn't mean to get caught," she said icily, "but you did, and now you'll face the consequences." And that's when the officers stepped onto the plane. Passengers whispered in shock as two uniformed officers made their way down the aisle. One of them addressed Naomi respectfully. "Miss Williams, we received your report. Are you pressing charges?" Naomi didn't hesitate, didn't blink. "Yes." Lauren's breath hitched. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding," she shrieked. "I didn't—" One officer pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault," he said firmly. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Lauren's entire body froze. This wasn't just about losing her job anymore. This was ruin. She struggled, begged. "Please, Miss Williams, I'm sorry." Naomi remained impassive, unshaken. "Your apology means nothing without accountability," she said, her voice quiet but merciless. Lauren let out a choked sob as the cuffs clicked around her wrists. And just like that, The once powerful, arrogant flight attendant was led down the aisle, humiliated, defeated, forgotten. Passengers watched in stunned silence as she vanished through the exit. Then, applause. A wave of claps filled the cabin. The businessman gave a small nod of approval. The nosy socialite gasped, "Miss Williams, that was incredible." Naomi turned to Grace, the young flight attendant who had stood by quietly but rightly. "Grace," she said, her tone softer now, "I saw your professionalism today. Thank you for stepping up when it mattered." Grace's eyes widened. I just wanted to do the right thing," she murmured. Naomi smiled. "And that's why you'll be hearing from my office." A beat. Then realization dawned in Grace's eyes. "Wait, are you saying—" Naomi nodded. "You're getting a promotion," Grace gasped, hands covering her mouth. "Thank you, Miss Williams," she whispered, emotion thick in her voice. Naomi gave her a reassuring nod before turning back to the passengers. "To everyone here," she said, her voice carrying through the cabin, "I apologize for what you had to witness today. This is not the standard of service I expect on my planes. Moving forward, we will ensure that every passenger is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve." The cabin erupted into applause. As Naomi stepped off the plane, the black SUV awaited, her driver holding the door open. But before she climbed inside, she took one last look at the aircraft. Today wasn't just about her. It was about change. And later, when the world caught wind of what happened, when millions saw the footage, when the hashtags "Chew Respect Above All" and Naomi's vision took over social media, one message rang loud and clear. Respect isn't a privilege. It's a right. Naomi sat in a sleek TV studio days later, facing an eager interviewer. "Miss Williams, your story has gone viral. Millions have seen how you handled this situation. What message do you want to send?" Naomi met the camera's gaze. Head on, her voice steady. "True leadership isn't about power. It's about setting a standard. No matter where someone comes from, what they look like, or what others assume about them, they deserve respect. And I intend to make sure that standard is upheld." The interviewer leaned forward, clearly moved. "And what would you say to people who face similar challenges but don't have the platform you do?" Naomi's expression softened. "You don't need wealth or a title to demand respect. You just need to stand firm in who you are." Weeks later, Naomi boarded another flight. A different crew, a different energy, warm, welcoming, respectful. The lead flight attendant greeted her with a genuine smile. "Welcome aboard, Miss Williams. It's an honor to have you." Naomi smiled back as she settled into her seat, looking out the window, watching the sky stretch endlessly before her. She knew this was just the beginning. What do you think? Did Lauren deserve forgiveness? Or did she get exactly what she had coming? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. And if you believe in standing up for what's right, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. More stories coming your way.